Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this month's North Somerset Council Live, where we're, for the first time, not just live on Facebook, but also on the North Somerset Council YouTube channel. So this is your regular monthly opportunity to ask us any questions you like, and we'll have a stab at answering them. My name is Mike Bell. I'm the North Somerset Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central Ward, and I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Housing. And I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves as well. So Bridget.
Hi, good evening. I'm Councillor Bridget Petty. I'm the Executive Member for the Climate Emergency Engagement, as well as Equalities and Diversity, and I represent Backwell.
Thank you, Bridget. And Mark?
Good evening, I'm Mark Caniford. I'm the Councillor for the Hillside Ward in Weston-super-Mare, and I'm the Executive Member for Placemaking and Economy.
Thank you very much, both of you. So just to remind everyone of the drill, all you need to do is pop a comment here on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, and we'll see that come through our end, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we possibly can between now and 7 o'clock. So before we kick off, there's been obviously quite a lot of exciting news over the last couple of weeks about progress with funding bids for the restoration of Burnbeck Pier and our project there, and with our partners at the RNLI and in the community. So I thought, Mark, if you want to just give us a quick update on Burnbeck, because I know a lot of people are interested in that before we take our first questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, great news surrounding Burnbeck. We've, I think many people are aware we've been working quite hard through the process of the Burnbeck project. The CPO is still ongoing, so we're not withdrawing from that process. It's important that we get ownership of Burnbeck Pier so we can do the work that is required on it. Many might have seen that last week we were given a 3.5 million grant, which would allow us to start work on the pier itself. And the good news this week, we've also been given another £250,000 to start work on the buildings and the essential work on land and on the island once we can get there. So I think what I find so encouraging is quite clearly there is the appetite from the funders, from the government, that they want to get behind this project, which gives me the confidence that we will get there with this, and with our partners RNLI, who are obviously putting in fixation back to where it needs to be, and with Historic England's input and finance, I'm absolutely dedicated to get this project over the line, as I know all my colleagues are in the council. So it is good news. We are progressing. We will keep on going, trying to get this back into the ownership so the public can feel confident that it would be looked after in future. I think it's important to say, though, that the council have never owned this site, and therefore when people say the council should have done it a long time ago, well, we wish we could have. We wish we would have had the opportunity, but we were not able to. But we are working towards that position where we can in future secure it, as done many years ago with Clevedon Pier, which is an example that we would all love to follow, and do the same here for Burnbeck. I think that covers it, Mike.
That's great. Thanks, Mark, and really helpful and uplifting news. I can see that we've got some questions starting to come in, but I'd also like to just invite Bridget to just give us a bit of an update on some of the community work that's been happening associated with the Sea Monster project. So obviously we all heard the good news that it was going to be extended for another couple of weeks into November, which is great. But what has not necessarily been so apparent is quite a lot of the community work that's gone on in support of the project. So I just want to give us a bit of a flavour of that, Bridget.
Yeah, so when the community heard that Sea Monster would be coming to Weston-super-Mare and happening, out of that sprung some think tanks where different people around the community came together to share ideas about what Weston could do in addition or alongside Sea Monster being here in Weston or being in North Somerset. So this week on Tuesday, I went to Faces Cafe, where the launch of Precious Plastics, a first for Weston-super-Mare, started, and we had somebody there to present kind of opportunities and lessons learnt about precious plastic projects in other parts of the country and around the world. So that was a really good kind of kick-off session. I know that those who have been interested in reuse may have followed Precious Plastics on Instagram or on other channels. So it's a really good opportunity. It's about the idea, and this is just an example, of broken buckets and spades that end up being litter on our beaches, being ground up and remodeled into other things. Plant pots, key rings, Christmas decorations. It's kind of an opportunity of endless things. I know that also, I think it's Regeneration Weston held some events this weekend to talk about kind of what next on climate action in Weston-super-Mare. And I think that maybe the Climate Carnival was also an activity that kind of came out of the think tanks associated with Sea Monster. Finally, I'll just say that, I've had feedback from visitors who have said that when they took their children to Sea Monster, alongside really enjoying the visit and enjoying being in Weston, they found that it was a good trigger for conversation around our previous dependency on fossil fuels and what that future might look like, that visioning of an idea around, there's funky wind turbines, there's funky solar panels. So having that conversation, people have written to me to say they really did find it helpful and as a good installation and art experiment. So I'm delighted that it's going to be open until the 20th of November. And people who haven't made it, or people who have made it in the day, now it's their chance to go once it's dark and get some different photography and different experiences.
Great stuff. Thanks, Bridget. Okay, let's get cracking on with some of the questions that have come in. So the first one is from Peter, who's asked about the chance of having a box system put in place on the roundabout at Maltlands because of the issues with traffic and queuing back. Mark, do you want to pick that up? I know it's not directly your responsibility, but you'll be familiar with the junction.
Yeah, Peter, you're right. There is a problem with that junction. It seems to be getting busier. There's no doubt about it. And I think that your idea most certainly could be looked at. I'm not a highways engineer, and it's not my remit, but I'm certainly happy to have that discussion with highways officers. There does seem to be quite a block up over there quite frequently. I do have to agree, and I do use it frequently myself, as Mike says. So I'm happy to have words with officers and see whether something can be done trying to alleviate that. I don't know the specific details, so I can't promise anything from this case, but I can promise you that I will pick it up.
Thanks, Mark. And I think, Peter, the key point is it's absolutely valid to say there is an opportunity to create two clear lanes around that roundabout so that access up to the next roundabout is clearer for those particularly exiting the estate. So I think that's a very valid comment. Okay, we've got the next one is from Matt, who is concerned about the current levels of flooding around Clevedon town, particularly concerned about the lack of maintenance on drains and obviously school children and others getting affected by that. And I think, all of us that have been out and about over the last few days when we've had so much rain would totally recognise this issue, and it's an issue right across the district in many areas. Bridget, do you want to say something maybe about our work on flooding in general terms, and then obviously if there are specific locations where we can look at the drainage, either us or the water and sewage companies, and we can obviously do that?
Yeah, I mean, the past couple of days have been some heavy rainfall. So certainly there are parts of our district, and as this resident said, build up around Clevedon and around Clevedon School. I can imagine massive puddles, really difficult for people to walk safely and to stay dry. And If you're aware of a drain that regularly floods, or you're seeing it at the end of your road, you can go online and report it. You can pin it on a map. If you can't go online, then please do call Council Connect and report that information. But going online, I found that I can report it in less than 2 minutes. So I really would recommend people do that. So in my remit, I sit on a panel of a regional committee around flood awareness and coastal flooding with the Environment Agency. So kind of big picture, I do work together with the Environment Agency in looking at where we're predicting problems with flood issues and kind of warning systems of that kind of those more serious nature. Hopefully at the moment, it's some heavy rainfall that might be a problem on our roads for a matter of hours, and hopefully we'll experience that by morning time that water has drained away. But I'm afraid to say, and I'll sound like a broken record, but with climate change, this is what we will be experiencing more and more. I'm the portfolio lead, and this is why I talk about climate change a lot, because what we're going to have is this heavier rainfall. We're going to have more extreme weather. We've had the heat waves in the summer, and we're going to see times when we have very heavy rainfall. And we will need to adjust our lives accordingly. And what North Somerset Council will do is help you prepare to be more kind of, what will you do when you have heavier rainfall around you? I know that North Somerset Life has arrived on doorsteps this week, and I saw that there are some articles there about preparing for the winter weather.
That's great. Thank you, Bridget. And just to underline, Matt, the more that you can report specific locations, the easier it is for us to get a team out there to have a look and to identify if there is a blockage or a more systemic problem that we need to address. Mark, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, Mike, all I was going to say, Bridget's bang on there. I mean, the other thing we've obviously had is we've had a higher than average rainfall in the last few weeks, gone from a drought. So things are really sort of finding it difficult to deal with it. But also, if you can't get on to Connect and you don't have that facility, just contact your councillor, give them a call, because they can report it for you, and they can do that. And I think that's really important, because you have multiple ways of contacting people to let them know. Council officers can't be everywhere. If they were walking around the streets, you'd be wondering what they were doing. So we do need the public to engage with us with that, and tell your councillor, and they'll make sure the right person knows.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Thanks, Mark. Okay, next one through YouTube. This is exciting. A question from Ian, who wants to know whether North Somerset had submitted an expression of interest regarding the government's investment zones programme, and if so, what sites did we put forward? So I'm going to invite Mark and Bridget actually to comment on this, both from the perspective of what action are we taking at the moment, and then secondly, that's not without some caveats. So Mark, do you want to just say something about our general approach first?
Yes, we definitely have put in a submission of interest. We know that the government are encouraging WECA in the Bristol area to get involved, and we know that Gravity at Bridgewater have been encouraged to get involved, and we didn't want to get sandwiched in the middle, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So we have worked closely with our partners, Bristol Airport and Portbury Docks, and we've put a really good prospectus together for government, and we hope they find it really beneficial to see that North Somerset, it won't be just those two spots. Of course, we've got Junction 21 and the areas certainly which are in and around our areas of economic benefit. So it's going to be a wider area than that, but yeah, you're quite right. It's important to put in that interest. It's important to see that we're not squished out in the middle. That's the important thing. So yeah, we are following that. We put in a good bid, and with a bit of luck, we'll be supported in that.
And Bridget, I know that all of us on the executive have concerns about the government's approach in terms of investment zones, and some of the mood music has been most alarming, actually, in terms of their intentions. So do you just want to say something about how important protecting our local community and our infrastructure is to us, as much as we are trying to make the most of opportunities as they come along?
Yeah. So for me, so I'm a Green Party councillor, and we are a rainbow, and we run our executive and our council as a rainbow. So we are, and this evening we have Lib Dems and me on this panel this evening, and we also work with our independent colleagues and Labour, and that's how we make our rainbow administration. So for me, I was very concerned about this government's loud shouts for growth at what felt like any cost. And there were some serious headlines coming from wildlife trusts, coming from the National Trust and other bodies saying, are these investment zones something to just deregulate and disregard all environmental protections, including habitat protections, which have been extremely important and powerful tools in protecting nature and our countryside? We also want to make sure that when we want to make sustainable development and community development in our area, it is based on what our needs are and what our community want to plan for the future. So while I welcome us having a local plan and a plan for our growth and our futures, I worry about the agenda that came out of that government claimed opportunity for investment. So we're a rainbow. We talk, we discuss, we challenge each other. So I certainly expressed concerns, and I made sure that we did not put any application in that was in places that we otherwise protect for environmental protection. So that's what the investment expression that we put in was matching our development objectives on a local level, and I didn't want it to remove any local democracy from the table. So we keep that challenge going with each other, I think.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bridget. Okay, next question from Russ, who is a disabled person and a power chair user, and he's concerned that he doesn't have complete access to the new disabled toilet next to the Bay Cafe at the Tropicana in Weston, and has got some concerns about how accessible that is for him. So it's really great that we succeeded in securing some changing places funding for the new disabled toilet at the Tropicana. All I can say is I think the circumstances you've described shouldn't be happening. So I think as a power chair user, absolutely that toilet should be accessible to you. So if you want to email me, Russ, with your contact details, I'll make sure that we follow that up, find out what's happening and give you the appropriate advice. We're really keen to improve the quality of our toilet offer across North Somerset. And in addition to the changes in places toilet at the Tropicana, we've also got plans for a new facility at Portishead as well. So it's really important to make sure we've got good facilities and that they're accessible to everybody. So I'm really concerned if that's been your experience. Bridget?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've just said there, Mike. We also have something called a disability access group. And Russ, if you have an interest, I would really like it if you were able to. So if you pass your details to Mike, he can also pass on your details, because, you know, it's very important that all our community members and those who have disabilities are able to get through to the council and communicate with the council about areas that they're finding have got barriers. So the disability access group is one of the opportunities that we currently use to enable those conversations and to ensure that the voices of our disabled residents who need those assisted technologies are heard.
Thanks, Bridget. So Scott wants to know if a local councillor can follow the bus down Wansborough Road in Wirral during school hours and out of school hours and confirm how safe they feel it is. So I guess this is going to be a concern about the road layout down there. I mean, we can certainly feed that back to your local ward councillors, but also ask our transport team to have a look at that, Scott, and just see if there are any issues. And again, if you've got any specific concerns in terms of the road design or anything else, let us know and we can make sure that the right things are being looked at. But thanks for raising the issue. Thomas asks if there's any chance of getting Sea Monster as a permanent feature, for example, by charging so that it would pay for itself. I'm going to ask Mark to comment on this, because we've certainly been having all sorts of conversations, although I think there would probably be mixed views about whether we should keep Sea Monster in the long run anyway. But do you want to just say something about what we've been doing, and of course how we've ended up with the 2-week extension this month?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Scott. I mean, Sea Monster has been hugely successful. There is no doubt about that. It has been controversial, as much art is. But we must remember that the platform is at the end of its life anyway. It is ready for to be recycled, and it was brought here as this whole project and event. I can assure you we have examined that, because you're not the only person who have said that, and there's people in the council who have said it. We were lucky enough to get the 2-week extension, and I think the reality is it's about the legacy. It's about what we leave from this, and there are things happening all over town because people are now interested in Weston. Because the good thing about Sea Monster is actually cause people to look in this direction where they possibly weren't in the past. So yeah, great, it'd be lovely to keep it, but it simply wouldn't be feasible. But I can assure you we have examined the opportunities around it.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to underline for anyone that's still in any doubt about Sea Monster, this was an opportunity that was brought to us as something that could be brought here last year, and we decided to go for it and bring Sea Monster to Weston-super-Mare and to North Somerset, and I'm really pleased that we've done that. The rights and wrongs of it and the costs of it are all matters for the government, who sanctioned the whole thing and have funded the entire operation, and in due course I'm sure all of that will be looked at. But the important thing for us as a council is that we want North Somerset to be a place where people recognise that they can come and they can try to do new things, and they can work with the community to make a difference and to make things happen. And that's absolutely what we've tried to do with Sea Monster. And like all public artworks, as Mark says, some will love it, some will loathe it. But what hopefully nobody will be able to say is, you know, Weston-super-Mare wasn't the kind of place where we could come and make things happen. So I hope that people between now and the 20th of November, if you haven't had the opportunity to go and have a look, go for it, get down there, have a look, and see for yourself what it's all about. And then you can walk away and you can complain or you can congratulate accordingly, but make the most of it whilst it's here. Okay, I've got another one for you, Mark, from Jill, who wants to know what does it take to get a reply from the planning department? So she's repeatedly reported a breach of planning approval over the last 3 months and can get no reply.
Thanks, Jill. I'm not going to make excuses. The service from our planning department isn't good enough. It's under huge pressure. For 2 reasons. One is clearly resources, but the other problem is trying to get hold of people who are suitably qualified to work in that field. There is simply a shortage. However, that isn't a good reason not to give you a reply, and that's the thing, especially if you've tried multiple times. If you would like to email me, Jill, with the issue, with the details, I'll get hold of and get it in front of an enforcement officer to make a judgment, to make a decision, or certainly to look at the complaint. But as I say, they are under extreme pressure. We have 2 enforcement officers, and I believe they've got about 2,500 live complaints going on at any one time. So I'm sure you can see the difficulty there. So just get it. You can email me at North Somerset. I'm sure it'll be put in the chat so you can see that, and I will make sure it's put in front of someone to look at.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. So next question from Tina, which is asking about when the promised new doctor surgery at Sunnyside Road North is going to be built, because it's gone very quiet. So this is the proposal from the local NHS to provide a new GP surgery for the town centre area of Weston-super-Mare to replace the Graham Road practice, which has operated for many years out of really quite inappropriate premises. So the current situation is that the planning process for the new doctor's surgery is just concluding, and I think the latest that I heard was that the NHS is just reviewing the funding envelope for the work because of obviously the fact that it has taken some time to progress, and obviously the current inflation and cost pressures that are happening in the economy more generally. I am assured that they're still committed to delivering the new practice and are working to make that happen. There's no doubt at all that the pressure is still being felt enormously by patients who are using Graham Road practice. It's not fit for purpose, and a new GP practice is needed for the town centre community. And certainly as a council, we're continuing to do everything that we can to work with the NHS and to lobby them to make sure that they get on with it. So all I can really say, Tina, is watch this space, but the plan is very much still to deliver that practice. Okay, next question is from Kathy. I'm not sure who wants to deal with this one. So Kathy wants to know, how are we going to fund the reported £200,000 shortfall for the Hill Road and Clevedon seafront changes? So I think this is obviously following up on a newspaper report about increased costs around the active travel scheme that's been going on in Clevedon. I mean, a bit as I've just been saying about the GP practice in Weston, actually, you know, unfortunately, with the current state of the economy, costs are increasing, and budgets are obviously set in advance and planned, but that they do need to flex sometimes to take account of increased costs, and that's what's happened in the case of this project. All I know in terms of answering your question is that is fully funded from transport scheme funding that we get from government. So it's not coming from local council taxpayers, although we all recognise that all the money that the public agencies spend, the government, local councils, all comes from taxpayers in the end. So it's all our money in the end. But in this particular case, my understanding is that is funded from transport schemes funding. We always look at projects when they're in action and afterwards to make sure that there was good value for money and good project management processes in place. And the council overall has got a very strong record in delivering projects on budget and on time. But in the current circumstances, things are really, really difficult. So I hope that people will recognise that we are in a particularly challenging circumstances at the moment. Okay, we've got two more from Kathy, but I'll come back to some of those in a moment. So Jennifer wants to ask about potholes. So specifically the Bourneville Estate area, which crops up on a regular basis on these Q&As. Is there a published plan each year for road resurfacing works, and what more can we do? So I'll invite Mark to comment on this if you'd like to, Mark. But just to say, in general terms, we have a fixed budget for road maintenance. So some of that is funded directly from the government, and unfortunately, the government has reduced in real terms the amount of money that we have available for road maintenance projects. We have tried to top up that funding in the last couple of years so that we can do more. But to just give you a sort of context, we've got something like a £50 million backlog in road maintenance schemes across North Somerset, and we only are able to spend around £10 million a year in maintenance. So you can see why it takes a long time for some of these things to be addressed. And I'm really sorry about that. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough for motorists or for public transport or for cyclists or for pedestrians. And we are doing everything that we can to convince the government to give us more money and to get the basics right. And dare I say, not always spend money on new things, but instead focusing on getting some of our current infrastructure up to scratch. but we are very dependent on the government giving us the funding. Do you want to say anything about the specifics around the Bourneville, Mark?
Well, it's so frustrating, isn't it, Mike? The reality is that the funding isn't there, but we do know how much work needs to be done down and around that area. There's no doubt about it. I can assure all listeners, all viewers, whichever way we want to put that, that checks are made on every single road. I have photographs on my phone of a lorry that goes around and checks the safety of roads. That doesn't help with the potholes. Potholes need to be reported. The state of the road surface itself will be safe, otherwise it would have to be done. But it's not good enough to just simply say we would like to do it. That we are looking at, and I know we've had discussions about trying to have a public access to the roads we're going to do as we move forward, and the ones that are be on the schedule. However, that's quite a difficult thing to do because of safety reasons. Roads do change, and roads where there are accidents and roads where there is a history of danger have to be dealt with. But we do get it. It comes up every month. I'm aware, we're all aware it comes up every month, and we wish we could get down there and fix it tomorrow. We really do. But like Mike says, you know, we're only getting about 1/5 of the funding that is required to get this work done.
Great, thank you. So I've got another question from Kathy, which is about consultations. How can you carry out consultations, ask Kathy, and then not keep the results so measurement or analysis can be made? Bridget, do you want to respond to that and just say something about how we go about consultations and engagement?
Yeah, so when a consultation takes place, and we do consult, there are some consultations that we do which are statutory, so it's a legal requirement that we do them, and others we do because we want to gather more information. The council wants to gather more information and intel from the residents and from other partners across the district or other organisations about their perspective on things. In most cases, as I believe it, a consultation report is then published, which summarises the responses that were given through that consultation process. So often a consultation report is then provided back to councillors to give them a flavour and a summary of the consultation responses that came out in relation to a piece of work. So this afternoon in a briefing, that's exactly what we received. We had, well, actually in the development sites report that is coming to council next week, there is a summary there of some of the comments and also some of the numbers of who was saying what. So in the most part, I find that we do get consultation reports summarising the output of these consultations.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. And again, if there are any specific circumstances where anyone feels that hasn't happened adequately, I'm sure Bridget will be happy to look into that and find out more information for you. Okay, I've got a question from Peter, who says that at the Hutton 20-mile-per-hour meeting, we were told that a zone could not be put in over the top of the hill where there is a sharp bend, no pavement, and traffic regularly doing 40 miles an hour or more. And he wants to know if this is correct, why? Without going into the detail and not being aware of the detailed circumstances, it's a bit difficult to comment, Peter. But if you want to let us know exactly the circumstances, we can find out from highways officers exactly what the feeling is. There are some regulations around 20-mile-an-hour zones and where they can be put in place, which are laid down by government. So it may be linked to that, but I couldn't really comment in any more detail without knowing a bit more about the circumstances, but very happy to pick that up, Peter, separately. So I've got a couple of questions from Kathy and from Claire around who appears on these Facebook Live Q&As, and particularly when Councillor Bridger, the leader of council, will next appear on one. So we've been running these Facebook Lives since, I think, late 2019. So we're into our third year of running these. We've had all of the different executive members at the council, which are the leading councillors with direct portfolio responsibilities, participating them on a regular basis. And we always have a good mix of political representatives as well. Councillor Bridger chaired the last session only 3 weeks ago, and I'm sure that he'll be at the next one in December. So we absolutely do our best, but you'll appreciate that not everybody can attend every single session every time. But we do certainly try to mix it up. And I'll certainly feed back to Steve Bridger that there is demand for a conversation. Okay, Ruth Lucas wants to say, she says that buses are remaining an issue in Long Ashton, and are there any further talks with First Bus around night buses? Do you want to say something on this, Bridget? I know that Ash Cartman has been very active in trying to improve the access to the bus service for school children, particularly in Long Ashton, and we're doing everything that we can to try and engage with First Bus more generally about the bus service provision. And there have obviously been some significant cuts over the last few months announced by First Bus. But I don't know if you know any more about some of the specifics, Bridget.
No, I think you summarised it quite well. Both Ashley Cartman and Stuart McQuillan from Long Ashton have both been echoing how we need a better service, but likewise Portishead, Clevedon, Yetton and Congsbury are really struggling. The Winscombe, the 126. So it has been a very, very difficult year to see buses ultimately not being supported by government enough. So there was COVID top-up money, and that has now ceased, and that's resulted in the bus companies having to reduce some of their services. And this comes at a time when actually, we need cheaper buses. Our running cars is costing more, petrol costs are going up, but also if you're trying to do your bit on the climate emergency, you're trying to leave the car at home, but you need a reliable and affordable bus service. And so the council is pushing hard on First Bus, and they are challenging them to do more. North Somerset Council bid for more money from government on bus services, and they were really good and really successful. And that's called the Bus Improvement BSIP, Bus Strategic Improvement Plan. Steve Hogg would be better to talk about that, but that is to make improvements to kind of the routes, bus shelters, bus priorities on our roadways. But it is not, unfortunately, at this time to support other bus routes. So there will be positive change. It might not be exactly what we all want, but it will be making our service more reliable. But there is more to be done, definitely. So thank you for your question, Ruth. And I completely agree that a quality night service to places like Long Ashton, but so many other of our communities, enable people to have a good experience, enjoy the night economy, enjoy going and doing sports, and still return safely on public transport. So then there needs to be more improvements, but we're going to keep working at working in partnership with First Bus, but also pushing them harder to deliver the service that our community deserves.
Thanks, Bridget. And I know Ruth has also said that there's, real issues around reliability of bus services too. And we know that that's something that we hear as well. And if First Bus were here, they would say they've had real problems recruiting and retaining drivers, and that's impacted on their ability to deliver reliable services. And I'm sure that there's an element of truth in that. But the upshot is that the current way that we operate bus services in this country just isn't fit for purpose. It isn't delivering what we need. And if the government is serious about investing in bus services in the longer term, and they are, and they've given us as a local authority in partnership with the West of England Combined Authority some significant sums of money to invest in bus infrastructure, they need to look again at the way we operate bus services, because this model, which effectively forces us to go out to private operators who choose what bus services to operate, when, how, and at what price. It just no longer a sustainable model if we really want to deliver the services that people need and need access to. So all I can say is we're absolutely doing our bit to lobby the government and to try and persuade them to do differently. And in the meantime, we're making the best of the situation that we can with the resources that we have available. Okay, I've got a question for you then, Mark. Western Superman, which is an excellent name, can I just say, wants to know how can he apply for funding to help promote some of the amazing events that happen in Western, but I guess this would be true of North Somerset wide too.
Yes, so that would depend on the event. I mean, North Somerset itself doesn't have an event budget, so it doesn't fund events. The town council do have an events budget, so it will depend on that event and what support's required. So event funding can be applied for through the town council, so that's one worth trying. But it will all depend on that event. Now, as you may well know that North Somerset is a Arts Council priority location. They like the things that we're doing around culture and arts. So you also have Culture Western, who can help access funding if it is the right sort of event. And you can find them in the art space in the High Street in Weston-super-Mare. And I think you can get hold of them online if you look for Culture Western. So there are a couple of avenues. In terms of funding your event, events do have to be sustainable. They have to stand on their own feet. I don't think anyone's going to fund anything that isn't going to sort of wash its face as such. Support is obviously necessary, and we can certainly help with advice around those sort of things and what you can do and how and what advice you're going to need around that. But those are two directions I can send you in to actually look for funding to help get these things off the ground and get these things going. And we want events. Events are all about that place making. It's all about the making the place we live in anywhere around North Somerset. People do enjoy events, there's no doubt about it, and they really do enjoy the right events. And we see that with so many people attending some of the events that are put on all around the district.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. And I absolutely would encourage people, as Mark suggests, to liaise with their business improvement district teams and with their town and parish councils as well, because there are a lot of good networks and funding pots that are out there that can support events and projects. So, you know, talk to those local councils and see what you can do. Okay, I am getting lost in my question thread, which isn't very helpful. Okay, so another one for you, Mark, from Ian. 95% in your consultation oppose the development of Downside Slade Road, and 93% did in Portishead Town Council's consultation. Should it not be removed from the development list straight away?
No, I'm going to be controversial. One of the problems we have is that we need to, as councillors, we need to look at the whole of North Somerset as a whole. And even though we hear what you're saying, the next proposal is that those controversial places go up for further discussion, no decisions, opportunities for parish councils, town councils to look at what opportunities they see. They might want to buy it, they might want to turn it into a park. All sorts of opportunities will arise. This isn't a decision process, this is part of the step. But what I don't want to see happen particularly is that one place says, well, you took theirs off, but you didn't take ours off, and you didn't take theirs off, and you didn't take theirs off. The reality is no one particularly wants any form of development, but we all know we need homes, we need affordable homes. So it is right and proper to leave everything on the table. And as we go through the process, you're quite right. If it isn't suitable and it shouldn't be done, then that is the time to do that. And with regard to these, if you look at what the proposal will be going through the council next week, is to have that further engagement with the parishes, with the ward members, and with the communities. So it is not a decision made, it's just another step in the process to get to the final decisions. I think that covers it, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, and I would just completely underline what Mark says. I know that it's tempting and easy sometimes, perhaps, to feel that attempts at consultation and engagement are not as productive as they might be, and you think, well, hang on, what's the point? You know, I know Russ made the comment, what's the point in giving you feedback if we don't always listen to it? Unfortunately, being listening and engaging is not always the same as being able to solve every problem, and it's not always the same, is it, any more than it is in your everyday life. Of always getting exactly what you want. You know, we don't always get what we want any more than anybody else does, but it's important that we try to have the conversations and that we do that in a balanced and grown up way, and that we all try to listen to each other as part of that. And that's what we're trying to do. Do we always get it right? No. Will you always like every decision that we make? I guarantee that you won't. Because most of us don't. You know, Bridget talked about our rainbow administration, you know, and amongst the different groups and parties that we've got represented, we absolutely don't always agree with each other. And that's the way it should be, shouldn't it? Because that's the way that you make good informed decisions. So, and that's all that we're about, really, trying to listen to people, engage with you, and try and make the best decisions that we can. Amy, so this is one perhaps for you to pick up after the event, Bridget and myself. Amy just wants to know whether the Disability Access Group were consulted about the Clevedon Seafront scheme. I am. So there would normally be disability equalities and impact assessments as part of any highway schemes. So I would certainly expect that to have been done, Amy. Whether there was a specific engagement piece with the Disability Access Group, I don't know, but I can certainly find that out. And just to echo what Bridget said earlier, really, we're really keen for more people to get involved in the Disability Access Group so that we've got strong representation from across North Somerset, and we've got a stronger voice for people with disabilities. So again, very happy to feed back to you separately on that issue. Okay, I've got a question from Rob, who wants to know if there's any detail about what the storm damage was that has caused the closure of Clevedon Pier Beach. He says there appears to be no visible damage. Do either of you, Mark, Bridget, know anything about that?
No, but I would. No, I don't know any details of that at the moment. I am happy to follow that up, so do feel free to email me, and hopefully colleagues will put my email address up. But if it is a health and safety matter, you know, I think what we want to be as councillors is a responsible council. And so if there are locations that have had storm damage that has the potential risk to anybody's safety, then that is the right thing to be doing. So while I don't know the circumstances, sometimes these things happen. Well, you know, extreme weather will mean that a space has become unsafe. So while I don't know the details, I am supportive of areas being made safe and the public being made safe wherever possible.
Thanks, Bridget. So next one, which hopefully you can deal with, Mark. It's from Valerie, who says that parking by Earlham Grove by Ashcombe School, people are parking in the bus stop and on the corners, which obviously causes some obstructions and safety issues. Is it possible to get someone down there like the wardens?
Got to do the unmute bit, don't I? Yes, definitely. There's a couple of these areas certainly near our schools currently, and that's one I'm more than happy to pick up with, because you're quite right. It is incredibly selfish to help benefit your convenience to put other children at risk. It's not right, and I think we all agree with that. I don't think any one of your 50 councillors would disagree. So I'm happy to pick that up. If you want to send me further details, please do. But I'm just going to move forward and ask community safety officers to take a look and to get down to and the PCSOs to get down to Ashcombe School.
I think
and to see what the forced. And am I breaking up?
You're a little bit erratic, but we got the gist of it, I think. So
I'll do something.
Thanks, Mark. And exactly as Mark says, and I think this would be a message right across North Somerset, we're really keen, particularly to make places outside schools as safe as possible, to encourage people to feel that they can walk and cycle to school safely. So that does mean that, you know, parking responsibly and appropriately is really key. So if there are any examples outside schools where parking is an issue, or where there's more that we could do in terms of making them friendly environments, you know, please do let us know, report that through to your local ward councillor, so that we can give it some attention. We've put a number of projects in place over the last few years to improve that in a number of school locations around the district, but there's a lot more that we can do. So thank you very much for that.
Mike, just to say, sorry. Just to say that I know that there is more pieces of work going on in the new year around safer routes to school, and just reconfirming and double checking, because during COVID there were some activities that went in, but I know that there's another piece of work that's taking place in the new year around our safer walking to school, because it is certainly something that across the district we believe in, and we know that our children are healthier if they can walk and cycle to school safely. So I know it's important to all of us.
Great, thank you. So we're making you earn your money tonight, Mark. Andrew wants to know if there's any news on the M7 planning application for 90, what he describes as unwanted houses in Mulberry Road, Congsbury.
No, this is a simple answer, Mike. I think one of the confusions is that I am responsible, quite rightly, for the planning department to try and reorganize it, get it where we need to be as a community, so that it's operating quickly. The individual planning consents are dealt with by a statutory body called Planning and Regulatory. However, I'm more than happy, if you'd like to email me, to pick that up for you, and I will certainly get you an answer to where we are in that process.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mark. Wesley asks about a protruding. Oh gosh, it's easier to read than say. A protruding drain lid on Manor Road in Weston. Sorry, Wesley, I missed this question earlier, but I have seen a photograph of this which somebody did send me, and I know it's in your patch, isn't it, Mark? I did report it actually when someone sent me the photo, so I'm concerned if it still hasn't been fixed. So we'll definitely take that up, and I'll make sure that our man on the scene, Mark Hannaford, goes out there and puts it back himself. He'll put it back himself.
I'll go down there tomorrow, see where we are, and if I can put it back myself, I will. You know
Yeah,
me.
It's incredibly heavy, is the gist, but it is a real trip hazard. Yeah. So if we can get that sorted. So thank you, Wesley, for raising that. Okay, let's have a look. So there's a few questions. So there's a few specific questions around the Clevedon work and the Clevedon scheme. Matt is making the point about how easily delivery and passenger vehicles are able to turn. And what the implications of that will be. And Kathy has also asked, if you need money for potholes, why are you wasting money on active travel schemes in Clevedon? So in terms of the vehicle access point, Matt, obviously, highways officers do all sorts of modelling and indeed on the road real world tests with large vehicles in order to check that the turning circle and manoeuvres are possible. You wouldn't expect them to do otherwise. If that ends up, of course, not being right in practice and it doesn't work, then it's something that will need to be addressed. I can't really say any more than that. I mean, just to emphasize, contrary to what some people think, our officers don't sit there trying to come up with schemes that are completely unworkable and impractical. You might feel like that's the way it is sometimes, but it definitely isn't. And in terms of could we have spent the money on something else? Unfortunately not. So when the government gives us funding for active travel, it has to be spent on active travel. So for the purposes of the Clevedon scheme, it had to be spent on walking and cycling improvements. We couldn't have spent it on potholes. And whilst I'm on the subject, the same applies to Sea Monster. As I said earlier, the council did not fund Sea Monster. We haven't put money into Sea Monster. But if somebody had come to us and said, here's a check for a few £1 million, what would you like to spend it on? We wouldn't have spent it on Sea Monster. We'd have spent it on other local priorities. Of course we would, but that wasn't an option. So just to be completely clear about that, again, contrary to what people might think, we're not sitting here trying to make crazy decisions. We're trying to make the best of the situation that we find ourselves in. But if you're in doubt, ask the question, because it's perfectly legitimate to not be sure about how these things work and where the funding has come from. So ask the questions. That's what we're here for, and we will absolutely try to answer them. I'll try and ratchet through a few others in our last few minutes. Oh, go on, Mark.
Mike, I just wanted to add, just to assure anyone who's listening, and not just those who have so many concerns about the Clevedon seafront and Hill Road. I did put a chronological post together sometime for the pressure group. Every business was visited. Every business had an officer knock on their door, talk about their needs, how they can get in and out. Now, we can say that didn't happen. We know it did. We have the dates. We have the times. I have posted that up. Now, as you say, Mike, if it doesn't work, that's a real issue, because everybody at the time of beginning of this process were happy with that. So, you know, you'll obviously get some who aren't happy with that. We know that. But the businesses were certainly happy at the time with the proposals that were put together. And I've been up to Clevedon regularly. And I think I'm up there again tomorrow. And Hill Road, I think, looks absolutely fabulous. And I've been shopping there more often now than I probably ever have been. It's just a great environment, and it's certainly improved. I know the seafront's a different issue at the moment, but Hill Road has been highly successful.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Valerie was just asking about the new GP surgery in Weston Town Centre. If when it gets built, could we put on some sort of hopper bus to improve access that could potentially include the hospital as well? I don't disagree with you at all, Valerie. It's really important that we have good access to services. There's no point in providing services if people can't get to them. That's been a key part of the conversation that we've been having with the NHS, both through the planning process and all the way through the conversation. And I'll personally, as the ward councillor for Central Ward, continue to be battling hard to make sure that we've got good accessible services. I've been actually quite keen for a long time on the idea of a bit of a hopper bus around the town centre in any event, not just for access to health services, but to a wider range of facilities. I think there's an opportunity for us to link together some of the things that exist in Weston Town Centre better, and to make sure that people can access them easily, and discourage a bit of unnecessary car journeys particularly. So that's definitely something that we're going to continue to look at. Martin has asked about the Banwell bypass and risks around delays and what that might mean for the funding landscape. So I think, you know, unless Mark or Bridget have got something specific to say on this, I mean, what I would say is that when we get funding pots, whether that's for Burnbeck Pier or whether that's £100 million for the Highway Infrastructure Fund, which is the work to build a new school and a new bypass for Banwell, we have to go through an incredible amount of due diligence before the government will sign off on the timescale and the funding. And we are not able to do anything in terms of spades in the ground until we've got real confidence around the costs and around where that funding is going to come from. North Somerset absolutely will not be exposed to risk if there are delays or if costs increase. And we would, in those circumstances, go back to the funders and have further conversations about how to to manage those pressures. A good example of where that's happened, of course, has been over the long-awaited Portishead rail link, where we've obviously had significant delays, which has impacted on the cost pressures. And again, we've had to go back and have conversations about how to resolve those issues. Right, and I've got two more I'm going to do. We've reached 7 o'clock, but I'm going to be naughty and do two final questions. Jennifer just wants to know whether there's any progress on further leisure facilities for Weston-super-Mare. The answer to that is no. So there's been a lot of talk about, potentially providing a second swimming pool at Hutton Moor in the past. I think what everyone recognises is that our leisure centre offer in Weston is not big enough for the size of the town and the growth that we've got going forward. But I'm afraid that post-COVID, and then now with the economic pressures that we're facing as a country, there is no appetite from the leisure centre market to invest, and we've got no funding from government to enable us to do that. The costs are absolutely, going through the roof in terms of operating leisure centres and swimming pool facilities. So I think there's no prospect in the short term for us to be able to deliver a significant improvement there. That doesn't mean that we don't recognise there are issues and more to be done. So I think, we'd be on exactly the same page as you, Jennifer. The challenge is about how to make it happen and how to deliver it in a sustainable way in the long term. And then
I'll just chip in,
I
will chip in that also rural communities also need access to fitness equipment, to fitness facilities and leisure facilities and swimming pools. And right now, while there are some in some of the north of the district, there are not enough, and many villages and communities are going without. And so it is a problem. So it's not just Weston-super-Mare, but other areas of our district are also struggling with a lack of provision.
And I'm just going to take a final question from Liz, which is about the cuts to the 126 bus service from Weston-super-Mare through to Wells. Somerset County Council have managed to find a contractor to operate the bus service for part of the loop from Wells to Cheddar. And Liz wants to know, are we able to step in and support the rest of the route? So the answer to that at the moment is no, for two reasons. Principally, we haven't got any money. So we've got no public transport funding available at the moment. But more importantly, we've got no appetite at all from any operators to run the service on the North Somerset side. So clearly, if we haven't got any money and we haven't got any drivers and we haven't got any buses, it puts us in a very difficult position. However, we absolutely recognise the importance of maintaining that service, particularly for Banwell, Winscombe, and Locking villages, and we're working to see what else we can do to refocus other services or to identify another contractor for the future. When we get our bus service improvement funding from government, which we've been promised, then we might be in a better place to intervene in the market. But the problems that we talked about earlier in this session are still there, and that is without an operator and without the ability to provide services directly ourselves, we are trying to do all of this with one hand tied behind our backs. So extremely difficult. Right, we've overrun slightly, so I'm going to say a huge thank you to everyone who has participated. If you've left this session frustrated and disappointed that we haven't answered your questions, I'm really sorry about that, but do feel free to email any of us and we'll try and have another go. And a big thank you to Mark, Bridget and the officers who support us with these sessions. And we'll see you next time in December.